All right, today we're going to take a look at two of the most famous poems in the world, Psalms 1 and 2, but in a way you've probably never seen them before. We're going to uncover a kind of hidden story that connects them, and honestly, it might just change how you read them forever.
So, you probably know Psalm 1, right? It's that beautiful, simple poem about a good person who avoids evil, meditates on God's law, and, well, they prosper. They're like a tree planted by water. It's super comforting. But because it's so simple, some have looked at it and basically said it's a naive and childish book. You know, a nice idea, but maybe a little disconnected from how messy the real world actually is.
But what if that simplicity is actually hiding something? What if we've only been reading the first half of the story this whole time? That's the mystery we're diving into today, this idea that our whole understanding of this psalm might be totally incomplete. I mean, on the surface, these two could not be more different. Psalm 1, that's the quiet man. It's a close-up shot, you know, a peaceful portrait of one person in their faith. And then bam, right next door you have Psalm 2, the raging nations. It's this massive wide-angle shot of total global chaos, political rebellion, kings plotting against God. It feels like they're from two completely different universes.
So here's the big theory, and it comes from some really fascinating literary detective work. What if these aren't two separate poems at all? What if they were put together on purpose, designed from the very beginning to be read as one single story, a story with a much, much deeper message?
So let's do it. Let's become literary detectives for a couple of minutes and actually look at the clues, because they're hiding in plain sight, suggesting these two psalms are really just one.
Okay, clue number 1 is all about structure. It's a literary device, a really cool one called an inclusio.
Think of it like a pair of bookends on a shelf. The very first word of Psalm 1 in the original Hebrew is ashrei, which means blessed. Now get this, the very last word of Psalm 2, it's the exact same word, blessed. This is a classic, deliberate technique. It's like the author is telling you, hey, everything between these two identical words, it's all one piece. Read it together.
And hey, this isn't some new wild idea. There are historical hints that people have seen this connection for centuries. For instance, some really old manuscripts of the book of Acts in the New Testament quote Psalm 2, but they call it the first psalm. That kind of implies that Psalm 1 was seen as its introduction, right? And the Babylonian Talmud even points out that King David had this pattern of framing his poems by starting and ending them with the word blessed.
But honestly, the most mind-blowing evidence, the real smoking gun, is what happens when you lay these two poems side by side. You start to see this hidden mirror, these amazing parallels and contrasts that are just way too perfect to be a coincidence.
Okay, so check this out. The exact same root word is used for two totally opposite things. In Psalm 1, the good guy meditates on God's law. It's this creative, thoughtful, life-giving act. But then in Psalm 2, the nations also meditate. But here, the word means they plot and conspire. It's a destructive kind of meditation. So one builds up and the other one tears down. Same word, opposite worlds.
And you see another one in how people are sitting. Psalm 1 warns you not to take the scoffer's seat. That's someone who sits down and just mocks everything with this earthly arrogance. And then Psalm 2 gives you the ultimate counterimage, the Lord who sits on his throne in heaven, just watching it all with divine authority. It's the flimsy little chair of the cynic versus the eternal throne of the Creator. The contrast is just incredible.
So at this point you might be thinking, okay, that's really clever, cool literary tricks. But so what? I mean, why does it matter if it's two poems or one? Well, it matters because seeing them as one, it changes the entire meaning of the story. When you read them together, it's kind of like adjusting the lens on a camera. Reading Psalm 1 by itself is like zooming all the way in on that single tree, this one good person trying to stand firm. But then when you add Psalm 2, you're zooming out, and all of a sudden you see the raging storm that tree is actually living in. And that right there is the whole point. The story isn't about a blessed person living in some perfect, peaceful garden. No, it's about a person trying to be that blessed tree right in the middle of the political and social hurricane of Psalm 2. Their righteousness isn't defined by having an easy life, but by their endurance through a really difficult one.
This completely flips our definition of blessedness. In this context, it's not some prize you get for being good, like you won a cosmic lottery. No. Instead, blessedness is the way of life. It is the very act of holding on to your principles, of keeping a heavenly perspective, especially when the world around you is absolute chaos and pulling you in 1,000 different directions.
And this leads us to the real takeaway of the whole thing. When you see it as one story, the message becomes crystal clear. True blessedness isn't about the absence of a storm. It's about having roots that are deep enough to withstand it when it comes.
So it really leaves us with a provocative question to think about for ourselves. Do we see being blessed as a reward that depends on our circumstances being perfect and calm? Or is it something deeper, a way of life that we choose to build and hold on to, especially when the winds start to blow?